Siman Tav Kuf Mem Ches, the very last Siman in Hilchos HaMoed, dealing with people dying on Yom Tov or HaMoed. Not so much of a Yom Tov idea here. Kasev Bahag, the Baal Halachas Gedolos, one of the Gaonim wrote, Mi shemes lo mes be'echad mimehi Regel, someone who has some relative, one of the 7 relatives for whom he has to sit Shiva, die on one of the days of Yom Tov, or b'chol HaMoed, or on one of the intermediate days of Sukkot or Pesach, chutz mibiom Acharon, other than the last day of Yom Tov, Eino Noheg Avilos Bregel. He does not have any type of avilos on Yom Tov or on HaMoed, ad shiatza kol regel, until the entire Yomim Tovim are over. Wemihu, but Yom Ha'achron Olalo, the last day counts. Afal pi she'en avilos noheg bo, even though there's no avilos on that day. Vemashlim alav shisha yamim, and you complete another 6 days of Shiva. Im meis biyom ha'acharon noheg bo avilos, and if the relative dies on the last day of Yom Tov, the second day of the last days of Pesach, the second day of Shavuos, or Simchas Torah and Chutz La'aretz, not Shmini Atzeres, then on this day he does have avilos. V'ken kasef of Rav Alfas, and this is also the position of the Alfasi, of the Rif. For Rabbeinu Tam Kasev, however, Rabbeinu Tam disagrees. Sha'af imes biyom achron, even if the person dies on the last day of Yom Tov in Chutz La'aretz, Eino noheg avilos. There's still no avilos. Shein avilos noheg b'moed klal. There's no such thing as avilos on Yom Tov at all. Ela aninos. However, there is aninos. Aninos is the period of time for us between the time someone dies and the time that they're buried. In the time of the Mikdash, Aninos was the day of death, and the relatives were not allowed to eat karbanos on that day. However, that's not what it means today. Today it means from the time the person has died until they are buried. Shim meis lo meis b'chol moed. If a relative dies in Chol Moed, Aser b'dvarim shaonen, Aser b'hem, he's prohibited in all the things that Nonate is not allowed to do. Those are discussed in Hilchos Avilos, just before the very beginning of Hilchos Avilos in Yeridea, not here. In other words, an onen is not allowed to do any mitzvahs at all. If he eats, he has to wash, because he can't wash Netilas Yadayim for the bread, but he can't say a bracha. So he washes without the bracha. He can't say the bracha before the food. He can't say the bracha after the food. And so he can't do any mitzvahs at all until he's arranged for the burial, and the burial is taken care of. If he meis b'yom tov, if a person dies on Yom Tov, Eino רוצה לקוברו בו ביום, if he doesn't want to have him buried on that day, ein עליו דין אנינות, then he doesn't have a halacha of aninos. Meaning, Rabbeinu Tam says the reason why someone is an onen is because they're required to expend all of their energies taking care of the burial. And if you're not going to be burying the person today, you're not taking care of the burial today, so therefore there's no din aninos because you're not doing anything for this. Elim ken tzarich lahachshich ala tchum, unless you have to go to the boundary, the outer limit of where you're allowed to walk on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Lahachin lo tzarkei kvora, in order to be there to be able to prepare things after Yom Tov. Az chal alav din aninos misha shemachshich, and then from the time that he has to start walking out to there, to be at the border at dark, then at that point in time, the halachas of aninos begin. Aval im meis b'yom tov sheni, but if the person dies on the second day of Yom Tov, who wrote say lekobro, and he wants to bury them then, meaning Jews are allowed to do a burial on the second day of Yom Tov. There's no gezerah of second day of Yom Tov concerning burying a person who's passed away. Whether this includes driving to a cemetery, basmenin, or not, that is not within our discussion. But if there is a cemetery within the Tchum Shabbos, then Jews are allowed to do a burial on the second day of Yom Tov Chutz La'aretz. or b'yom tov rishon, or it's the first day of Yom Tov, רוצה, לקוברו על ידי akum, and he wants, in the first day of Yom Tov, we're allowed to do a burial using non-Jews. Chal, alav, aninos. At that point, the halachas of aninos do apply because he's going to be arranging the burial now. But after the person has been buried, ein alav din aninos. There is no halacha of aninos anymore. Noheg b'regel. However, the private things, the things that about avilos that no one would notice, not having sexual relations, for instance, having your bed turned over, which is not something we do anymore, but these things, the things that are in private, are not seen by the public. Those things one would do. Even though you're prohibited to have relations, the mourner does not have to sleep among the men. But his wife is allowed to sleep in the same room as him. What he is hinting to, although not saying, is if you have a bride and groom who one of their relatives dies before they have relations, then they are supposed to sleep separately. They're not allowed to sleep in the same room. He sleeps with men and she sleeps with women until the shiva is over, and then they are allowed to have relations. This is a very complicated thing. I'm not doing all the details of it, but that is what Rabbeinu Tam is referring to. And to this, the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam is what the Rosh agreed with. Al pi she'en avilos b'regel, even though there is no avilos in regel. Im meis lo meis b'regel. If someone dies on Yom Tov, haregel ola l'minyan shloshim. The Yom Tov still counts for shloshim. So if someone died on the second day of Chol HaMoed, Sukkos, where there are going to be 4 more days of Chol HaMoed and 2 days of Yom Tov, all of those days would count. Those 6 days would count toward the shloshim, when the shloshim ends, and the last day of Yom Tov, Simchas Torah, would count toward the Shiva. Umisaskim bo b'regel l'nachamo, we comfort him on Yom Tov. V'loacha regel matchil limno Shiva, and after Yom Tov we start counting Shiva. V'kshichlu Shiva l'misa semeis, and when 7 days have passed since the death of the person, not from the last day of Yom Tov, this is what the Rosh says, afal pi she'adayin lo kalu havelus, even though his avelus isn't over, melachto naseis al yedei cherem, other people are allowed to do his work for him. His store can be open, for instance, or whatever. Ve'avadav osin lo b'tzina b'toch beiso, and his servants can do his work in his house, privately, so it's not publicly seen that he's doing it. What the reason why this is true is because in Chol HaMoed, in general, we're not allowed to do malacha. And therefore, because they aren't doing any malacha, it counts toward the 7 days that he's not supposed to do work. So he has 7 days of refraining from doing the work that is the mourning. The comforting, that's not completely there. That's not over yet, but the days of not doing work has been completed. All right. Meis lo meis kodem haregel. Someone dies before Yom Tov, v'noheg avilos, and he's able to have some type of avilos, meaning if the burial is finished an hour before Yom Tov, right? And he's able to get home and sit down and start sitting Shiva. Afilu sha'achas, even if he's only sitting for a very short period of time, lifnei haregel, before Yom Tov starts. Batla mimenu gizera Shiva. Shiva is dead. It's gone. It's negated. The 1 hour of Shiva is it. Yom Tov ends Shiva, and we're done. Vimei haregel olim lo leminyan shloshim. And the days of Yom Tov count for shloshim. So, Hare Shiva Lifnei Haregel. So he's had now 7 days of mourning before the Yom Tov, because when it ends the Shiva, it still counts for 7 days, even though it was only 1 hour. V'mei haregel mashlim aleihem ad shloshim. And the days of the regel count for him toward the 30. V'davka shenahag avelus ba'oso sha'a. And this is only if he had the ability to sit some of Shiva. Avalim shagag or hizid. But if he couldn't in one way, or he intentionally decided, I have to get ready for Yantiv, I have to take my shower for Yantiv, as soon as I get home, I can't sit down and have anyone comfort me. V'lo nahag avelus, and he didn't have any Shiva, wasn't nohag any part of Shiva at all. Or shaya karov lachashech, or it's too close to dark. By the time he gets home, there's no time. It's hadlakas neros already, maybe even after. V'lo haya yachol linhog, he couldn't do it. Ein haregel mevatel avelos. At this point, the regel doesn't end Shiva. Shiva starts after Yom Tov is over. Ela noheg beregel dvarim shebetzina, but during Yom Tov he does the private things that a mourner does. Umona Shiva Yamim la'achar haregel, and he counts 7 days after the Yom Tov. Ubaoso hashiva malachav naseis al yeder acherim. During those 7 days, work can be done. If it's Pesach or Shavuos or Sukkot, his work can be done by other people because he's already had 7 days when he hasn't done work, or work hasn't been done for him. Osin lo betzina, they do it privately. The servants can do it in his house quietly. Vein Rabbi miskaskim bo lenachamo, and people don't come to comfort him like a normal shiva. Shari nisasku bo beregel, because they comfort him a little bit during Yantiv. V'regel olalo leminyan shloshim, and the Yantiv counts for shloshim. Im nahag shiva lifnei haregel, if he has all 7 days before regel, meaning on the 7th or 8th day of Nisan, someone dies and is buried. So he completes his Shiva. He gets up from Shiva the day, 2 days before, or the morning of Erev Yantiv. Regel pogea b'toch shloshim, and the regel is within shloshim, so even earlier. He starts sitting Shiva, let us say immediately, or he's sitting, even if he's sitting Shiva on, toward the beginning of Shiva on Purim. Mivato mimenu gzera Shiva. The Yom Tov ends gzera shloshim. The Yom Tov ends in the shloshim. Afilu imchal Shiva erev haregel, even if the last day of his Shiva is erev Yom Tov, so he gets up the morning before Yom Tov. Mutter l'saper l'chabes l'rchotz erev haregel, even though it was their minhag that someone in shloshim does not cut their hair. This is still our minhag, but he doesn't wash. They can't no baths. They had no baths for all 30 days. We say that we're all spoiled today, and we do, but this is when we discuss Hilchos Avelis, we will learn these things. But he can do this Erev Regel. He can do it Erev Yantiv for Kavod of Yantiv. V'ken nami imchal yom shmini lios b'Shabbos. If the 8th day is on Shabbos, and b'Shabbos Erev Haregel, and Shabbos is Erev Yantiv, mutter l'saper l'chabes l'rchotz Erev Shabbos. He can cut his hair. He can, other than for his father and mother, he can wash Erev Shabbos because he can't do it on Shabbos for Kavod Yantiv. V'im lo gilech be'erev Haregel. If he wasn't able to shave Erev Yom Tov, mutter l'gleach achar Haregel. He can shave immediately after Yom Tov. Shari nisbatel menu gzera shloshim, because the decree of shloshim is already over. Avo b'soch Haregel lo yigaleach, but on Yom Tov itself he can't. Kevin shay efshar lo l'gleach kodem Haregel, because he could have Erev Yom Tov. V'imchal yom shvi shelo b'Shabbos. If the 7th day of Avelos is Shabbos, and that is Erev Regel, and that's Erev Yom Tov, mutter l'gleach b'Regel, then you can shave on HaMoed, kevan shelo haya efshar lo l'gleach kodem, because he couldn't do it before. This is, as we learned earlier, that if someone was in prison and they were released in HaMoed, they're allowed to shave because they couldn't do it before Yom Tov. V'im chal yom echad or yom vav shelo be'erev regel, if his first or his sixth day is erev regel, mutter l'saber l'chabes, he can shave and he can do laundry. V'asur lirchotz ad halayla, but he cannot wash himself until the evening. V'gam asur lilvosh mashikabas ad halayla, and he's prohibited to wear any of the clothing that was laundered for him until Yom Tov begins. Riva Perish, and Rivas explains, Kamosha asur lirchotz kach asur lechabes. Just like you're not allowed to wash, so too you're not allowed to do laundry kol hayom, the entire day. V'mihu shneim mutarim l'samuch lachashecha, but he says both of them are allowed to do close to darkness, meaning so it's very clear you're only doing it for kavod of Yom Tov and not because you feel disgusting after having gone a week without taking a bath. Vein tzarich hamtin ad halayla, and you don't have to wait until it's actually night. Ve'aviad ni rosh zal kasav kasvara harishon, and my father, the Rosh, wrote is according to the first opinion. V'davka b'shar mesim, this is only for other people that have passed away. Aval ba'aviv ve'imo, but for your mother and father, asur l'saper ad shigar bo chavero, just like any other time, you're not allowed to shave, cut your hair until people say you look disgusting. Afilu pagabo haregel, eino mevatel lo. Even if Yom Tov comes, the prohibitions on making yourself look nice if your parents died don't end. Miu kasav smak, but the smak wrote, Davka shepogea bo beregel b'stoch shloshim. This is only where the Yom Tov comes within shloshim. Aval im avru shloshim, but if the 30 days of intensive Eilos is passed, upagabo regel, and then Yom Tov comes, or afilu chal yom shloshim erev regel, or the 30th day is erev regel, hareliv mafsik umuter lekaleach. Yom Tov interrupts even for your father and mother, and you don't have to wait until someone yells at you and says, you look disgusting now. This is the first half of the Siman, and Be'ez Hashem, next week we will do the second half of the last Siman in Hilchos HaMoed.